Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Joe Troiani, advisor to the 708 Board of Riverside Township, or what we refer to as the Riverside Township Mental Health Board. I welcome you here this Saturday afternoon for a presentation titled "The Kids Are Not All Right." And this is one in a series of presentations we have done over the last couple of years. And we hope to have another one coming up during the fall of this year. One of the things I do want to mention, as part of the Riverside Township Mental Health Board, we have an outreach committee. And our outreach committee has been going around to the various organizations in Riverside Township with a presentation highlighting what the 708 Board or Mental Health Board is all about, as well as detailing some of the services that are available. If you or your organization is interested, please go ahead and contact us, and we could arrange for a date where one of the board members, and usually a couple of our board members, will come and present. Let me go ahead with today's program. I would like to invite the Riverside Township Supervisor for a few words as we begin our presentation.
Thank you. I'm Vera Wilt, Township Supervisor, and the Township is always very grateful to all of the fine work that the Riverside Township Mental Health Board does. They truly make available services and spread the word about those services that most people still aren't aware are available. So I thank you for making a presentation like this to spread the word. If you're watching this on TV later, please spread the word, have others watch the presentation. The township is here for social services, and there's nothing better than providing mental health and well-being services to the community. So thank you to the Mental Health Board, and have a great presentation.
Thank you. I would now like to introduce the president of the Riverside Township Mental Health Board, who will also take a minute or two to talk a little bit about one of the resources we have, that is the Community Resource Center, or the CRC. Adam?
Good afternoon. My name is Adam Wilt, and I am the president of the Mental Health Board. For those of you who are not familiar with the Mental Health Board, our entity is a volunteer group and a volunteer board, and we really work to help align resources to help support the needs of the community, both in the areas of mental health as well as disability services. And so I think sometimes these are areas that people don't realize. There are a lot of organizations and agencies in the community that do a lot of great work that are here to support the needs of our residents. And so some of what Joe was referencing earlier was we also have a community resource center, and a few of the agencies that we partner with have helped to manage the community resource center and make available the ability to help direct residents when they have needs. Most of the time, needs are complex. We don't live in a vacuum, and there's overlap. There is nuance to each person and the support that they deserve. And really, that's what the Community Resource Center does, is help connect people with those who are able to help make their lives easier, help them navigate the complexities of community assistance, but more importantly, that really help make sure that those in the community know what's available. Today's topic is a topic that I think touches so many people in the community, but really this is meant to be today a conversation and the start of a conversation. This is not the final word on a topic, but rather the opportunity for us to start a discussion where we can help provide some insights to some of the resources that are out there, some of the nuances that are facing the residents of our community, but more importantly, to help make sure that people know that you're not alone. The mental health is a topic that I think has had a lot of stigmas over the years, but really what we're looking to do is not just get past the stigmas of mental health and the disability world, but more importantly, to help make sure that people are getting the support they deserve, the support they need, and knowing that they're not alone, whether it's with others in the community, but more importantly with the agencies, with the officials that we have. I'm excited and proud to introduce a leader in our community, which is the Riverside Director of Public Safety, Matt Buckley, and he's going to tell more about some of the things that are happening in our community. And I think today's conversation is going to be a really great opportunity to learn more about what's out there, but also to start this conversation. Please don't let this be the time when we end the conversation, but really let's keep this going, because this is an important topic, and the only way we're all going to grow and make sure that people get the support they need is by making sure that they're aware of it. So thank you.
Our next speaker is the Public Safety Director for the Village of Riverside, who's been truly a partner on our mental health initiatives. One of the things I'm very proud of is that the officers that serve with the Riverside Police Department are all trained in CIT, Crisis Intervention Team, mental health specialists. And that's pretty unique. Not every town, village, or city has as staffed up members of CIT as we do at the Village of Riverside. So, Director Buckley, let me turn the platform over to you.
Thank you, Joe. So one thing Adam said, and I'm going to start with that, is that you are not alone. I want people to realize that. Here in Riverside, you are not alone. There are many resources that this village has to offer. And with our public safety departments, both police and fire, we're there working hand in hand with the township to do so. As Joe said, my name is Matt Buckley. I'm the Director of Public Safety here at Riverside. That means I'm the police chief and the fire chief here at Riverside. I manage both departments. I am not an expert in mental health. But what I will say is that we experience it every day. We see it on a daily basis just by responding to calls or different incidents within town. And not only in Riverside, but outside of Riverside also. So that's why, to me, mental health and what we do here is so important. The other thing, the kids in our town. When you take your kids to school, you usually see a police officer close by the school patrolling those areas. There's a reason for that. That's where all our kids go to congregate. That's where they go to school. That's where they spend their day. Very important for me to have police presence there to make sure that they're going into a safe environment and that we're there watching over them and making sure that they're getting to school safely and that they're going to have a productive day at school. So having that visibility there is very important to me, and the kids of this town are extremely important to me. And this topic is extremely important to me. Suicide among adolescents between 15 and 24 years old is the second leading cause of death in the United States. That's an alarming number. The sad part about that number is recently we've seen suicides in children age of 12, suicide attempts at 11 years old. And what can we do as a community to work together to try to prevent that? And that's why we're here today doing this. One of the things Joe brought up is that Riverside Police Department, all of our officers here at Riverside are crisis intervention trained. That was one of the things when I came here as public safety director that it was a priority of mine. I went through the course 15 years ago probably. And when I started as public safety director, I made sure all of our officers had it. Interesting that in the state of Illinois, currently, you have to be a police officer working the street for 2 years before you can take this course. So that's one of the things I'm working on getting changed. I hope to get it where it's taught in the police academy. And the reason why is I had an officer here, he had to go through the class. It's a long class. And he's like, oh, do I have to go? Absolutely, you're gonna go. He came out of that class with a totally different attitude. He goes, do you know that I use this training every day? When I pull over a car on the street for a traffic stop, I use CIT to talk to the person and relate to the person. When I go on mental health calls, I use this stuff constantly. And to me, that was testament that here's a person that didn't really want to do it, that came out of that class with a totally different attitude of, this was the best class I've been to, and I use it. And then he uses that to help others in the department also to get them motivated to utilize these skills and this training, because it is so important. Luckily, we have Joe, who's here, who is able to put the class on for us. We had the mental health board actually help fund the class and put it together, which is where that partnership is so important. Another thing that I did here in Riverside is that we have a shared police crisis worker. We share that crisis worker with Brookfield and North Riverside. Half of that cost of that crisis worker is paid by the mental health board for the township, as well as the other half by the village. And that crisis worker spends about 2 days at Riverside, 2 days at Brookfield, 2 days at North Riverside. I know it doesn't sound right, but they split their time up between the 3 departments. And the reason for that is those are all the 3 feeder towns for RB High School, which is our high school district, where we were seeing a lot of these types of cases, and they're able to utilize that and basically bring it all together under the high school. I know we say that, but it's under all 3 departments through the township. So it's very important to have those types of resources available to us where we can share them with others and make sure that we're touching all the students or anybody that we can to help them. Everybody says that, after the pandemic is when the mental health issues really started kicking up a lot. I tell people, no, it happened long before that. It happened right here with our kids having phones or access to cell phones, because everything is right there at their fingertips. I remember when I was young going to school and you had to do a book report or a report, you'd go to the library, you open an encyclopedia, start reading and studying what you were going to write about. Nowadays, they go to AI, type in 2 words, boom, the report's right there in front of them. It's a totally different way of living right now for kids. I say it all the time, it's tough to be a kid today. It really is, and that's where we have to help out with that. We're going to talk a little bit about bullying later on, online predators, some of the adolescent mind development. Joe and I had a conversation not too long ago where we were talking about, truly an adolescent or mind isn't developed until you're about 25 years old. Nowadays, we're saying it might even be closer to 28 to 30 years old because things aren't the same as what they used to be. We're going to talk also about what to do if you do need help and different resources that are out there. So that'll be part of our panel and our discussion as we go forward. So I'm truly honored to be here today, to be a part of this. We will be up here to answer questions and go over other things also. But thank you very much. And Joe, thank you for putting this together.
Again, I can't emphasize the importance of collaboration between the 708 Board, Public Safety, and our service agencies working together to address these issues. Now I'd like to go into my presentation. And again, this is a presentation of Riverside Township Mental Health Board. And the title of the presentation are "The Kids Are Not All Right." What's going on? I concur with Director Buckley in terms of what we're seeing is a change that has started occurring around 2008, 2009, 2010. In fact, there's some recent studies that are not in the slide presentation that talk about a cognitive decline with the generation that's coming up, that is cognitive functioning is actually decreasing. Prior to that, cognitive scientists have said that every generation we see an increase in cognitive functioning, but we're now starting to see a cognitive decline. And the question is, what is contributing to this and the mental health crisis? And it's kind of a perfect storm. There's an interaction effect. That's like 1 + 1 + 1 doesn't equal 3, might equal 6. And what's going on is obviously the advent of social media, smartphones, internet, World Wide Web, and something that is really starting to impact on the youth population, and I'm talking about AI. That's one of the major contributors. Another major contributor is COVID-19, the lockdown itself. The congressional research report came out and illustrated in research studies the impact that the pandemic lockdown has had profoundly on our children. The third thing that impacted was, of course, school closures for 2 years. We're now seeing a difference between kids who had a 1-year versus a 2-year closure. The kids with the 1-year closure are faring much better. And the other thing is online learning for K through 12 during that time period. The consensus, including some of the research, is that online learning for K through 12 does not work. In fact, it might have what we call an iatrogenic effect. That is, it causes more harm than good. And then you've got the availability, and one of our first seminars a couple of years ago was on the availability of recreational marijuana and the availability of oils as well as recreational marijuana and some of the other products that is easily accessible to our youth. To give you an idea, get a snapshot of how this is impacting. Last week, remember, one of the largest employers of youth is the United States military. For example, at Great Lakes, the U.S. Navy takes in 22,000 new recruits annually, and that's just one of the branches of the service. And there's been a recent study by the Pentagon that's raising a lot of flags. And it's pretty hard-hitting. It talks about 77% of young Americans between the ages of 18 and 24 are not eligible for military service without a waiver. So a waiver needs to be done in order to get them into the military. And they detail what the reasons are. Physical health problems, typically inactivity, weight, I'm specifically talking about overweight, drug usage, marijuana predominantly, but they also strongly talked about mental health problems as well as behavioral issues, that these are the things that young people going into the military are presenting with that requires a waiver in order for them to go into the military. According to the Center for Disease Control, the main casualty of the lockdown were kids. And kid suicide, you know, again, Director Buckley hit it on the head. We started seeing changes around 2010, but they accelerated during the pandemic, and they really started climbing between 2020 and 2021. And this was the largest increase in decades. Suicide rates and homicide rates for young people hit a 20-year high. Half of the 18 to 24-year-olds, 50%, are reporting experiencing anxiety and depression. And this is not unusual. Recent study of young men and women who are leaving the military, they're typically 22 to 26 years old, having completed 4 years. According to a recent RAND study, 40% of the young men and women coming out of the military in their early 20s, 40% are reporting mental health issues. This also reflects on homicide rates. Look at the increase from the 10 to 24-year-olds and the 18 to 19-year-olds. The other issue we're having, and this has been repeated in editorials and time again, too many kids aren't going back to school. Absenteeism is described as 10% of the time, 18 days. And what we're seeing is prior to the pandemic, the average absenteeism rate for chronic absenteeism was 15%. Post-pandemic, the rates have increased. They doubled to 28%. And in 2024, the rate was 23%, which is 57% higher than prior to the pandemic. This outcome results in poor academic outcomes, reduced economic prospects, diminishing quality of personal and social lives. And just to illustrate this, I was kind of shocked last year to hear on the news, Harvard University, where our best and brightest kids go, had to implement a remedial mathematics course for kids coming into the university. They talked about kids were having a hard time with divisions, multiplications, simple math. And again, a remedial course just for our best and brightest coming in, which also gives you an indication of what's going on. A very significant report came out in December of 2024. This was the congressional report. Title of it, After Action Review of COVID-19 Pandemic, Lessons Learned and a Path Forward. And it's a 556-page report developed by the COVID-19 Pandemic Committee on Oversight and Accountability, U.S. House of Representatives. Again, this was released almost a year and a half ago. And it talked about, some of the problems. Pandemic-era school closures have had an enduring impact on generations of America's children. These closures were enabled by groups meant to serve these children. The prescription cannot be worse than the disease, such as the strict and overall lockdowns that led to predictable and avoidable consequences. And again, this came from the U.S. House of Representatives over a year and a half ago, and it's one of those reports that's quite damning. I need not talk about the details regarding the long-term COVID impact on children. It's profound. It's affecting children, adolescents, young adults. The kids who were in middle school and in high school were profoundly impacted. And even the colleges and universities. I teach at a university, and we've talked about the undergraduates coming in and the deficits that they're experiencing as a result of, during those formidable years, experiencing COVID. And it's been written about. There's a book out called The Anxious Generation, How the Great Rewiring of Childhood is Causing an Epidemic of Mental Illness, by a social psychologist. And the epidemiological information shows that the rates of anxiety, depression, self-injurious behavior, and suicidality for Generation Z, born between 1997 and 2012, significantly higher numbers than in previous generations. So it's not the only generation that was impacted, but it seems to be the generation that was impacted the most. The researcher also further discusses that that in 2010 there had been a emergence of various societal technological changes that have accelerated into an adolescent mental health crisis. Now, again, this is not only being tracked here in the United States. The research is addressing it by the Canadian government, the United Kingdom, and many European countries. In fact, you might have heard on the news, countries like Australia want to put a restriction. That is, a child needs to be of a certain age before they have access to social media. This is also being discussed actively in the United Kingdom, and we're starting to hear discussions here in the United States. These changes have led to significant increases, again, in depression, anxiety, self-injurious behavior, and suicidality. His concluding thoughts are that numerous society and technological factors have contributed to the transition from play-based childhood to phone-based childhood, which he believes is responsible for the mental health crisis. Now, on top of that, there's the issue with marijuana. The president of the Illinois Psychiatric Society a couple of years ago rang the bell, and he said his psychiatrists that were doing emergency room work were reporting a noticeable increase of youth coming into the emergency departments with acute psychosis from marijuana in the past few years. And it's a number that is still maintaining a high level, and there's some reports that it probably is increasing. Even the deputy director of NORML, and that's the advocacy groups that pushes for legalization and recreational availability of marijuana, reports that marijuana use carries risk for young people and those with a family history of mental illness. One of the things I was going to mention, I don't have a slide on it because it just happened in the past couple of days. The New York Times, in an editorial. Now, historically, the New York Times has been very supportive of decriminalization, supportive of medical marijuana, and also supportive of recreational marijuana. To everyone's surprise, they came out with a major editorial that said, we need to rethink this, admitting that there's too much of a rush to move ahead with these, and they cited some of the problems that we've talked about, including with adults, medical problems, but their major focus was look at what it's doing to our children. And they're calling for a pause and a rethinking of marijuana. You know, unfortunately, the horse is out of the barn with that because according to the last report I read, for example, marijuana sales in the state of Illinois has generated more money than the sale of alcohol, only to be exceeded by tobacco. But I think it's $1.2 billion in terms of revenue from marijuana sales. And the American Medical Journal, Journal of the American Medical Association, talked about in October 23, again, psychiatric disorders tied to teen cannabis use. And they provided with a bunch of information regarding the increase. Now, we're not talking about percentage increase. We're talking about 200 and 300%. In my conclusions, final slide, realizing that there's a real issue there, on August 1st, the governor of Illinois signed a law to implement mental health screenings in schools. This is a first step. It tasked the Illinois State Board of Education to work with Children Behavioral Health Transformation Initiative and other stakeholders, which will be available to schools in 2026. The materials will include model procedures and guidance to help school districts implement universal mental health screenings at least once a year, starting in the 2027-2028 school year, a year and a half from now, and it would be starting with children from the 3rd grade on. So even at the state level, they realize what I refer to as a mental health emergency with our youth. What I would like to do is introduce Dr. Denise Dailey. Dr. Denise Dailey has spoken here before because of her focus and specialty also with veterans. And Dr. Dailey is a graduate of Adler University, and I've had the pleasure of collaborating with her on a number of issues, including more recently talking about marijuana and the effects of marijuana. So let me go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Dailey.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me here to be with you to talk about this very important conversation. Thank you, Dr. Troiani, for the introduction. As he said, I do have a specialty in treating post-traumatic stress disorder and working with military and veteran populations. But that's based on a core value that I have with serving underserved communities. And so I also have a large part of my clinical practice that's focused on traveling across the state of Illinois and doing early childhood assessments, autism screenings for folks who have been on waiting lists for more than 2 years. Today, we are going to talk about a number of issues, but I'd like you to kind of perceive this presentation as being delivered by a community partner. I'm equally as invested in keeping your kids safe. And so today we're going to be giving you an overview of children and adolescents' digital use and how AI is going to influence their use moving forward. So we are going to be talking about the impact of digital use and AI on the childhood development, well-being, learning, and safety of our children. I'm going to be giving you all some practical information, but also some age-specific guidance for families, caregivers, and those who are involved in different roles when working with children and adolescents. We are seeing that screen use begins at a very young age and is increasing with age by population. We're also seeing that socioeconomic status also influence the access to digital media and the use of AI. When we are talking about screen use, we are talking about any type of video content that includes tablet use, watching TVs, using your phone, gaming, and social media. What we're seeing is that the more time that we're using a screen, we're displacing time that we can be spending sleeping, engaged in outdoor activity, and engaged in different types of experiences that are key to the social development of our children. The Center for Disease and Control and Prevention reported that on average, 2 to 4-year-olds are spending 2 hours on digital media a day. 5 to 8-year-olds are spending 3.5 hours a day. And 8 to 10-year-olds, we're seeing a large spike where they're using up to 6 hours a day on digital media. In adolescents, we're also seeing spikes with numbers as high as 9 hours a day. I'll let that sink in for a moment. The CDC also recommends that children are not supposed to be using any type of screen time between the first 2 years of their life. And so to see that they're using 2 hours a day is extremely concerning. 3 and 4 children younger than the age of 2 were allowed to use screens not just for educational purposes, but for entertainment. And we're seeing in low-income communities that the rates are higher. 92% of children from low-income communities globally are estimated to use any type of digital device or mobile device for entertainment before the age of 1. A national report showed that half of American children ages 2 to 4 had their own personal tablet or smartphone, and that more than 2/3 of 5 to 8-year-olds are spending on average 3 hours a day on social media. So we know that screen time is a problem, and it's replacing key social interactions that are important to the development of children and adolescents. But what we're also seeing is that screen time isn't all bad. It's used in educational settings. In fact, it's estimated that 39% of American schools are using AI applications on a daily basis. We're seeing that high-quality educational apps can support early learning and help mitigate gaps for academic performance for those folks who have intellectual disabilities and developmental disabilities. But we're also seeing that co-viewing with adults helps keep our children safe. It helps us strengthen the comprehension and the language development that's so crucial to having social interactions as our kids get older and contribute to society. Young children need interactions. Excessive passive viewing of screen time, it reduces our language growth, and it causes extreme concern. Our agenda for today is to review the screen time and the impacts it has on mental health, the impact of AI on social functioning, self-esteem and identity distortion, AI algorithms and how that impacts risk for our children, cyberbullying, deepfakes, misinformation, and how adults can intervene to support children. Some of these concepts that we cover might be new, some might be familiar to a lot of people. The purpose is to view it from an open mind and see what's relevant for the people who are in your life. We see that excessive screen time has a huge impact on the social and emotional functioning of our kids. And we're also seeing that there is a positive correlation where children who are being distressed are turning to social media, and then also children who are going through different types of challenges in school settings and home life are more prone to using social media as an escape to their everyday problems. We know that excessive screen use is linked to irritability, low mood functioning, and behavioral issues. Distressed kids overuse screens, and this worsens their distress. Problematic media is also more prone to occur in families that have less contact with one another, more conflict, and inconsistent boundaries. We're also seeing that there are gender-specific trends where boys are more often to show externalizing behaviors that mirror ADHD and other neurodiverse conditions. They're more prone to displaying physical aggression, property destruction, and involved in different types of incidents that unfortunately come to the attention of law enforcement. We're seeing that our young girls who are using too much social media, screen time, are more prone to engaging in internalizing behaviors, or those behaviors that increase anxiety and depression, confidence. And so this is a huge concern during one of the most important parts in the developmental period that contribute to how a person responds to challenges, life stressors in their early adulthood, and so forth in their life. So this is a critical, important topic that we're talking about today. We're also seeing that, can you go back to? We're seeing that increased screen time also contributes to poor quality of sleep, and that children who engage in pre-bedtime screen time are more likely to have issues with sleep duration, which is remaining asleep overnight, and sleep initiation, which is falling asleep within that 15-minute window. That's considered healthy. This is not the time to assess your own personal sleep quality. Any time that we're spending online, those 9 hours a day where we're scrolling or doom scrolling, that's time that we could have been spent being physically active. And so we're seeing that increased screen use is also linked to obesity, and we know that obesity puts kids at an increased risk of morbidity and mortality in adulthood. Cognition, Dr. Troiani talked a lot about this. When we are multitasking and trying to engage in passive screen time or using our phone in addition to engaging in other tasks, we are actually dampening our cognitive resources, and so we are seeing attentional deficits in children and adolescents who are overusing their screens. We'll talk a lot more about peer relationships as we go through the presentation, but there is an increased risk for bullying and, unfortunately, using social media and screen time for validation. Next slide, please. All right, and so these are the topics we're going to cover. One more. All right, so how is AI and social media impacting our children? We know that the highlight reels are a part of an algorithm that create these viral moments that make social media and the lives that people are living up there look like they're easily accessible. There's no context to it. And so children are starting to grow up with this concept that they can have access to these lavish lifestyles, and unfortunately, that impacts their esteem and their comprehension of really the work that it takes to achieve those types of life goals. Social media also disconnects our youth and leads to more reliance on validation, likes. Children are starting to use their parents' money to purchase bots and other types of friends that can engage in the liking and information sharing of what they post online. We're also seeing that the alerts that are attached to different types of gaming systems and also social media, they lead to compulsive behaviors and also attentional deficits. We've talked about the lavish lifestyle and how that can lead to an inaccurate perception, but let's talk about filters and what that is doing to our children's confidence. Filters and the use of AI distort our self-image. They help us cover different types of flaws and be over-reliant on the use of AI to feel comfortable and confident in our own skin. Validation. We are relying on our, online community to validate whether we're going in the right direction with our character development, or if we need to change parts of ourselves that might be extremely important to us. And so having those real life parental connections to validate different parts of your child is extremely important now more than ever. There is no over complimenting that could hurt a child right now. And authenticity. It's so hard for us to tell what's real and what's fake. The use of deep fake is becoming more sophisticated each day, and so it's harder for our children to really distinguish what is credible and what is not. And so from an early age, it really is recommended to start introducing some of these concepts to your children. Personalized feeds. And so AI is a software that learns from data. It looks for patterns and huge amounts of information and uses those patterns to make predictions or decisions. What we know about AI is that based on how much time we spend on a screen, how often we're liking certain types of information, that helps personalize our feed. When our kids are going through breakups or hard times with their friends, AI knows. It can generate an algorithm that personalizes their experience, and it can also amplify the distress that they're experiencing. We call that AI radicalization. AI doesn't think or understand like humans. It can't protect your kids. It doesn't know exactly how old your child is. It just knows that it's going through this experience by the amount of time that they're spending. It's learning the more time your child is spending on it. So it's best that parents and adults who are involved in children's life co-view information at a young age. AI shows up in regular everyday tools. It's my best friend. It's autocorrect when I'm typing too fast. It's the Netflix recommendations that helps us have a good weekend with our family and friends. It filters spam information, like those annoying phone calls that we get every month. And voice assistants like Siri and Alexa are all powered by AI. But AI can make mistakes. We've talked about cyberbullying and some of the worst case scenarios that lead to the death of a child and completed suicide. We know that online bullying is becoming increasingly difficult for schools to really manage, and that some of the school systems in our great state are a little bit behind on what type of discipline they can enforce in a school setting for bullying that occurs online. It's so important if you have school-aged kids to start thinking about how you will respond to these types of issues from the moment your kid steps into school. It's important to reassess your plan for addressing cyberbullying and the aggression that can happen online by considering, as your child develops, are the approaches still age appropriate? We know that older children do like more autonomy, but still protection is important. And so partnering with your child to have a serious conversation from the very moment that they go to school about how to respond, how to report, and who to tell when there is bullying occurring online is extremely important. All right. Next slide. Okay. Deepfake and misinformation. We are seeing that the use of children is being used to make deepfake images, some that are sexually explicit. This is something that all parents need to be aware of, that deepfake can create content that is very inappropriate for children to see. And so that is something that UNICEF is trying to work on, creating international policies to protect the use of children and their images and some of that deepfake content. But one of the things that we really need to start thinking about is data harvesting and how posting pictures of children can be used sometimes in inappropriate ways. This is becoming increasingly more accessible for the average person to be able to create very harmful films. And in fact, this kind of feeds into a lot of cyberbullying too, where your children's images can be used in inappropriate ways that almost look real but aren't. And so we want to keep an eye on this and develop a family plan, of course, for reporting, blocking, and documenting this type of harm. It's important to review privacy settings regularly and teach your child how digital footprints can affect future opportunities. Another thing that we know about deepfake, of course, that it's hard to distinguish what's real and what's fake, but there's a lot of emotional manipulation that can occur with the use of deepfake and misinformation. Reputational harm and cyberbullying and online threats are just part of the problem. Deepfake also creates a distorted understanding of reality and trust. It influences our children's beliefs, behavior, and at a time when they are extremely vulnerable. The use of AI can dampen critical thinking skills, so it's so important for us to start having these conversations as early as possible. I cannot overemphasize that. There's no age that's too young. Next slide. All right, let's talk about chatbots, artificial intimacy and isolation. This is a conversation that a lot of people aren't having, but it is on some of the different parts of the internet that a lot of children are exposed to. And so we are seeing that the use of chatbots and using chatbots as romantic partners is becoming an increasing issue for young children who are finding that it's much safer to have an AI chatbot that can validate everything about them and give them the type of feedback that's personalized to their needs. We are seeing what's called different types of sexual orientations like robosexual, digisexual, fictosexual, which are terms used for individuals who are attracted to fictional characters, which extend to AI-generated personalities and chatbots. Very important to have the language to have these important communication with your kids, keep them safe. Next slide, please. All right. The protective factors. We've talked about a lot of the risks, the dangers that can happen online, but let's talk about what can keep your kids safe. Digital literacy taught early and reinforced regularly is very important. The CDC recommends that no children under the age of 2 have screen time, 0 screen time, not even for educational purposes. We know that it's not too early to start having these conversations around 2 to 4 by pointing to things like the Roomba vacuum. This is a machine, it does what we say. And using different everyday objects to help teach how AI is a tool that we use. It's not a person, it's not a living being, it doesn't reciprocate feelings. Creating rich offline lives for children is also important. Being involved in different types of clubs and community organizations, having time to play sports, do chores around the house. Yes, the doctor said chores are okay. Reading, having hobbies, all help a child develop the social skills that they need and the adaptive skills that they need to be a successful individual later on in their life. Increasing protection around sleep is also very important. Limiting screen time before bed, and that includes gaming. A lot of people talk about social media, but for our middle-aged children, they use gaming as social media. The Roblox, the Minecraft. I'll never forget, I had a child explaining to me what Five Nights at Freddy's was in front of her parent, and her mom was floored. She didn't know that there was so much morbid activity going on in the game and that there was actually a lot of graphic content that was showed. So, being aware of these games that your children are playing is also equally important because there can be a lot of predatory behavior that exists in those spaces. And strong caregiver connections. If your kid's on your phone and you're on your phone, this reduces the ability to have those important conversations and develop the linguistic skills that kids need, the critical thinking skills, and also the ability to have flexible conversations with people that are dynamic. We want our kids to be able to problem solve. We want our kids to be able to think critically about situations when we're not around to keep themselves safe to the best of their ability. And strong caregiver connections can reduce the risk of digital unsafety. All right, caregiver tips. So the CDC does have some recommendations on how much time is too much, and I definitely recommend that every parent and the person that is involved in any type of caregiving role look at the recommendations for their children. Modeling is also important. It's hard for us to set limits on our children when they're seeing us do the same thing. And so modeling what responsible digital use and AI use is going to be incredibly important for our children. Offering alternatives. We know that having different types of activities that can create a lifestyle for children is important, help them form that identity that is so crucial to navigating different social settings. And so we want to offer some alternatives to AI and digital use, like we talked about earlier, going to the library, having that experience together with your child makes a huge difference. And then it's also important for caregivers to be aware of how advertising influences the choices our kids make. And so regularly reviewing your child's algorithm, seeing how your child's personalized feed and what is being sent to them is going to be important. I would recommend personally doing that at least monthly. We've talked about some ways to introduce AI to young children. Explaining that AI follows instructions is going to be one of the most age-appropriate ways to kind of discuss AI and some of its risks to children. And then explaining in a very layman's term that AI doesn't think or feel. It's not a person. It doesn't behave in the way that we do. And then using those objects like microwaves, your refrigerator, or even a vacuum could be helpful. For those middle childhood children, I would definitely recommend that co-learning is still so important at this age, doing things alongside of your child and being really attuned to how much autonomy they have in digital spaces is going to be incredibly important. Expressing interest in their social media life and supporting and validating the things that they're doing is also going to be important so they're not over-relying on fictitious characters or chatbots to do that for them. You want to monitor for increased anxiety, any type of secrecy that's occurring with online behavior, or the reliance on AI for social situations. If they're asking AI before they're asking you, that might be a concern to look into, and it deserves a conversation. And then aligning with important adults or caregivers in their life of how to intervene when we see that the reliance on AI is become too much. We know that by signs that happen with their sleep, their performance in school settings, the time that they're spending in everyday real-life situations, and the types of hobbies that they have. And then our teens, they know so much, but yet they're at so much risk for being vulnerable and taken advantage of in these online spaces. Some pretty direct conversations can happen with AI companions, explaining that empathy in AI companions is programmed. It's part of the software. It makes it personalized to what we need. It's not real or authentic. Explaining that health information can still be wrong and that we shouldn't over-rely on using AI to explain what's going on in our bodies. Getting our information from a licensed provider or a healthcare professional is still the best way to understand our bodies and make sense of our symptoms. Data harvesting, we are seeing that unfortunately things that kids post in their childhood are impacting their ability to obtain employment and secure different opportunities, different college opportunities, sports and academic scholarships. So we want to make sure that what they're posting is appropriate and can grow up with them. And like many people say, pass the smell test in 10 years. And then AI learning tools. AI is an enhancement. When we're in everyday situations, we might not have access to AI. And so not over-relying on it as our education, our intelligence is going to be extremely important. And telling your kids and explaining with everyday situations how AI can't be of assistance will be incredibly important to support them and help them develop those analytical abilities that can get them far. One thing that I didn't talk a lot about is when things go too far, and so there is 988 and 911, and on my website I have a resource page that kind of differentiates when to use each one. That's www.ourdailybread.com. 988 can be an extremely important resource for parents that maybe just don't have all the answers and need that extra input from a licensed professional, and so I definitely recommend using it. Confidentially, if you ever have any concerns or just don't have the complete answer at this time. Thank you so much for having me. I hope I didn't go too over. Yeah.
We're going to pause the taping right now in order to get our community agencies up here to talk about the services available for children. After their presentation, we'll reconvene the entire panels to answer any questions that you might have. So again, we'll pause the taping at this point, And let's get the community agencies up here, and then we'll all grab a seat. Welcome back. Again, I'm Dr. Joe Troiani with the Riverside Township Mental Health Board. And the second part of our presentation will be members of the various agencies serving the children and adolescents of Riverside Township. What I'm going to do is have them go ahead, introduce themselves, what they do, and then we'll come back and start a conversation. So.
Wonderful, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Daisy Gomez. I'm a licensed therapist and the Director of Professional Development and Training for Pillars Community Health. Pillars Community Health is a mental health agency that provides traditional outpatient, individual, family, and group therapy services for children, adolescents, and adults. Additionally, we have a variety of services from crisis intervention services to additional support services like community support teams. Additionally, other state programs like Pathways that are basically care coordination programs for the clients that we service from this community.
Hello, everybody. My name is Yaritza Carrasco. I also work for Pillars Community Health, but underneath the Lofted 8 Corners, which is a place for teen mental wellness. We like to refer ourselves as the third place for our teen and youth to come and have a place where they have adults that will guide them in the correct way, have support with their mental health, and have learn healthy coping skills to manage different things. Each day we offer different groups that are focused on learning about their mental health, healthy relationships, healthy mind and body, and how to provide support for one another with peers. In-house, we do have therapists. We have an art therapist as well, and we also have CRSS, which are certified recovery support specialists. So the Lofted 8 Corners is a place that is two organizations that came together, NAMI West Suburban and PCH, so Pillars Community Health, and they provide the peers and we provide the therapists to provide and instill not just a place where they can come to get support, but a place that they can come and find hope with having those conversations with their peers that will have hope because they have been through that and they can share their lived experience. We also have support for our parents. Twice a month we have support groups led by a peer. And then once every trimester, we have different parent education classes, which become topics that parents are coming to us and telling us they need, or our teens are telling us that we need to provide these classes for their parents. As well, when we provide this educational services for our parents, we do also provide that same knowledge for our teens, catered to them in their developmental stages. We do support teens 12 years old and in 7th grade, all the way to the end of high school.
Hi, my name is Yvette Williams. I am Vice President of Programs at Community Support Services. We specialize in working with individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. We generally start at about age 3 with individuals. We are in about 18 southwest suburban communities. Our goal is to work with caregivers and the individuals and letting them know while they may have special needs, they are people too, and they provide so much to the community. We do employment in certain areas, and we do respite and home-based services. We also currently have 8 group homes in the community, as well as 2 adult day programs in Cicero and in Brookfield.
Good afternoon. My name is Sean Lewis. I'm a community resource specialist with Aging Care Connections in LaGrange. We coordinate services for people 60 and older to help them live autonomous in the community for as long as possible. We coordinate things like in-home services, help with bathing, laundry, housework, that type of thing. Home-delivered meals. We have congregate meals. We have social workers who go to the homes and do in-home assessments to assess people for other needs and services. I also work in the Community Resource Center. Our office hours are, we're there Monday from 9 to 5, Tuesday and Wednesday 9 to 1, and Thursday from 9 to 5. I'm there. We also have staff from UCP Seguin, who helps individuals with disability, physical and intellectual. And then we have staff from way back in, helping people with addiction needs. So feel free to contact us anytime. It's a walk-in office. We also do appointments.
Good. My first round of questions, and we could go ahead and do what I call a round robin. You guys are in the front lines. You're working with the children and adolescents of Riverside Township. From your perspective, what types of issues are you seeing? What kinds of problems? And also the types of services that are needed for the Riverside Township community serving our children and adolescents.
A lot of what was already discussed is exactly what we've been seeing. I've been a therapist for over 14 years now, from a wide range of a 4-year-old to a 65-year-old client that I've had. And so I've seen a significant increase in adolescent like loneliness and emotional distress, right? And kind of what we just discussed, the impact of social media and AI has led to folks, and specifically young folks, feeling very isolated and feeling very lonely, and an increase in emotional distress and an inability to not be able to manage big feelings, right? And how to cope with big emotions, and how to navigate thoughts that are distressing, right, from depression and anxiety. And so we've seen a significant increase in that that is contributing to, has been contributed by the pandemic, of course, but as mentioned before, I started seeing this way before COVID-19 came about. And I can speak more about this, but I'll pass the table.
Prior to being the team lead at the Loft and Eight Corners, I was like a little pillars therapist inside RB High School, which is the high school here in the community. And something that I continue to see over and over again, whether it be at RB High School or here in the community of Brickfield, and working at Pillars for many years, is the fact that I keep getting parents come and talk to me about, my kid doesn't know how to they don't know social skills. They don't know how to make friends. They don't know how to keep friends. They don't know which friends are safe, which friends are not safe. There's lack of boundaries or misinterpretation of boundaries. So I feel that's something that parents keep talking to me, and I always bring that back to the question. So what have we done as parents to foster those good resilience skills? Right? What have we done to teach our kids how to make friends? I think the presentations was amazing. I hit on great points of like, if we are on social media or watching TV or playing video games, we're not doing it with other people. So we don't know how to go back and forth. We don't know what it feels to have like sarcasm, and when something is sarcasm and it's funny for everybody, or when it is something meant to be for you to get hurt. We're not learning these skills that are naturally learned by being around humans, right? We need to push our kids and also our parents, right? Because we lead by example. We got a model to them to have social connection with others. I find it really funny. I have a 5-year-old, and we go somewhere. He's like, hello, this. And a lot of people just don't answer. Or they're like, oh my God, he said hello, right? We're losing that concept between smiling and saying hello to people, right? And just those simple steps that maybe we're not thinking are a big thing, but they are, right? Mm-hmm. How to have conversations with our kids that go deeper than, I don't like that friend, right? Deeper than, I could just tell they're not good for you. Yeah, why? I know it's hard to explain because we might not know, because it might be our gut feeling like, I lived through this, but we have to remember that they haven't. We have to teach them how to have that gut feeling and how to honor that gut feeling in a place that is safe and open for conversation. Instead of getting shut down because you don't have the answer I want, let's have a dialogue. Let's have healthy dialogue. I think it's back and forth, and I know parents always get the bad end of a stick, right? Because it's like, well, the parents. Well, yeah, it takes a community, right? It takes a community of helping each other and relying on each other. And being that concerned parent and concerned neighbor of how can I help, And it goes back to simple things of like, oh, let's have my neighbor, a kid, mow my lawn. And I stand out there with like some lemonade, have that back and forth conversation. Those little steps make a big difference. Being open to conversation, modeling healthy relationship, and admitting when we have done or seen something incorrect, where they point it out. So instead of them isolating in their room and be like, I can't have this conversation with this adult because it's just teaching me how I'm not good, is owning up and saying, I'm sorry, I went about it the wrong way. Or, allowing them to express their side of the view of what's going on, right? Because sometimes we hear some stories and we're like, ugh, right? And we just jump shift. And so sometimes it's back to that emotional regulation for us as parents as well, to model that for our kids. And I think having places like the loft where you have adults come into you, our teachers, our school personnel, even like our firemen and our policemen, all of these adults, these helping adults, it takes a community, but we also have to be part of the community for this to work.
I would say one of the topics we touched on earlier, bullying. That is definitely an issue we see, and it's particularly hard when you're working with individuals already with an intellectual or developmental disability. And it's meeting these individuals where they are, just because they have the special needs. They still have so much talent. They're generally, in our employment program, we work with individuals, and we hear supervisors say they're often the first ones that show up for work. They're willing to do more, and they work the hardest. So I would say developing the skills that they do have, and just continue, like I say, to cut out some of the screen time and focus on the talents and the gifts that our children do have and bring that to the forefront.
I think my perspective's a little bit different. The population that I typically see in the CRC is people 60 and older. And so oftentimes technology is causing further social isolation for them, particularly the people who are 75 plus. Just simple things like accessing services, you need to create accounts and passwords and usernames, and they don't know how to do that. You also have the situation where a family has moved, spouses have passed, and they don't have social networks locally. Texting is difficult for them to do with people who don't live in the area. So I think actually maybe a topic for next year would be older adults in social isolation, and maybe how could technology help them with connecting with people that they are no longer able to connect with.
We've got a number of parents that are listening on cable to this program. If you had to give them one piece of advice, think of one thing or two things of advice that you could give them. I know there's a lot to talk about, but what would that be? We'll go around.
I would say listen. Kids and adolescents specifically want to be listened and heard and validated. And if you have the opportunity as a parent to be curious instead of critical or judgmental when having conversations with them, empowering them just by listening to what they have to say. They're smart folks, and it is the adolescent developmental stage where they believe they know everything, because that's just part of that stage of life, and they don't need any help, right? They still need structure, they still need discipline, they still need a parent. And so keep that in mind as you think about the relationship that you have with your child. Is it too friendly? Right? Are you still the parent? And that also leads to empowering you as a parent to continue to educate and guide your child through life. So listen.
Ooh, that's a hard one, because I have a lot of things, right? I can make presentations upon presentations on this, but I think one of the biggest things I hear from the kids are like, they're not present. They are there physically, but emotionally it's hard. Now, this could be because of many reasons, but as a parent, I would suggest that don't wait till they're a teenager to foster a relationship with your kid. Start when they're born. Something that I love to give as suggestions is take out your kids, give them 15 minutes, 20 minutes of undivided attention, no cell phones. Play a board game, talk. This is how you're going to teach them how to talk back and forth. This is how they will be seen, right? You might not agree with what they're telling you, You might have thoughts about it, right? But that lecture time is for other times. Right now, focus on developing that relationship and thanking them for being vulnerable and bringing this up. And two would be like, do not be afraid to be that parent. What do I mean? We often hear it's like, well, their kid is struggling with mental health, and their kid is doing drugs, and that it will happen. Unfortunately, I don't have a magic wand to take all of that away. But if you are that parent, it is okay to speak up and ask people, please help me, I don't know what to do. Whether it be something that you're very scared of or just starting to figure out it might be a problem. Be that parent that asks all the questions. Because the only way to know better is to learn from each other. And the way to beat the stigma around mental health and substance use is to talk about it. If you will feel isolated because your child is using substances or struggling with mental illness, let me tell you, you're not alone, right? And we need to speak up, and we need to cry out for help for these services for our children. And it starts with one thing: be that parent that asks the questions, and be that parent that is there. And I understand, sometimes we have to work, we have other duties, but 15 minutes a week, undivided attention with your kid will change your relationship.
I would definitely say take care of yourselves. Know your limits, know your boundaries, know when to hold them, know when to fold them, and be involved, be engaged.
I would say a couple of things. One we do in our house is phone vacations. Force people to turn their phones off for a couple hours and then force them to engage. And when they were younger, we used to call it forced fun, where you're going on bike rides, you're going out walking the dog as a family, you're walking to go get coffee at Dunkin' Donuts or hot chocolate, you're doing things outside that don't require the phone, that require you to interact with your family. They didn't like it initially, but to this day, they're all teenagers and in their 20s and 30s, and they enjoy bike riding, they enjoy going for walks. So I think forced fun and phone vacations.
Before we call up the presenters, just real quickly, again, the name of your agency and a phone number they could contact you at. And this will also be on the screen.
Pillars Community Health, and the website is www.pchcares.org.
The Loft at 8 Corners, and if you want our resources, they are in the back, and the website is theloftat8corners.org.
Community support services, www.communitysupportservices.org, and I also have some resources located in the back.
And I can be reached at the Community Resource Center downstairs. It's the office next to the Township office. That's Monday through Thursday. And then Aging Care Connections in LaGrange, and that's agingcareconnections.com.
Okay. We'll take a moment. We'll pause in our taping, and then let's bring up our presenters. The last part of our presentation today is we have our panelists as well as the agencies, and at this point in time, we'd like to entertain any questions, but I'm going to take the liberty of throwing out the first question. Say if I was a parent, my kid's 40 years old now, so, but if I was a parent, how do I regulate media time, or how do I regulate iPhone time? What age is it appropriate for the kid to have it? And again, I know there's a lot of pressure, social pressure, that, Johnny and Susie have an iPhone, why can't I? So let me just kind of throw it out to our panelists.
Well, the CDC does recommend that from ages 0 to 2, there's 0 screen time. And then once you go up in age, it starts with 30 minutes a week. So I think the CDC would be a good place to start when it comes to referencing how much time should be used. We know that behavioral intervention, so rewarding desired behavior, rewarding a child when they are engaged in something that doesn't have to do with digital use, can also be very important, and incentivizing the, activities off of the phone. And so I would say that would be the first start, is to, create those fulfilling activities and that lifestyle that your kid is desiring. Try to help them cultivate their interest, cultivate shared hobbies with your child, and then reward those activities for them when you're engaged in them.
Again, let me throw out the same question to the panel. My kid wants all of this. What do I do? How do I restrict?
I think that's a hard question, right? It's layers because each family has their own norms, their own values. I think having a discussion of why it is needed, is it a need, is it a want, or is it a privilege? When you put it that way, then you are able to provide healthy limits and boundaries to your kids, right? You want a phone? That's fine. What do we need a phone for, right? Oh, I need to get a hold of you. Okay. So there's levels to this, right? We have phones that are, we call them the flip phones, right? They only have to, right? And this may be more appropriate for the younger kids when they get older and, they're more of wants, and then it's like, oh, token economy, right? Like, you want a phone with internet, you want the latest iPhone. What am I gonna get in return? Making it fun for them. Because I think as humans, we're naturally want to get, validation and rewards. But we have to really think of, like, what is the purpose behind this, right? And I think at a certain age, it does affect the teens, right? Because I do see teens that don't have any phones that are in high school, and they are missing out on certain opportunities, right? But how do we find the mean way, and what are we comfortable with as parents? So yes, it depends. It's because it's a scale, right? Because no two kids are alike. But just really being intentional about if we do have this cell phone, what is the purpose of the cell phone? Is this a want, a need, or a privilege? And then having that conversation, and before the phone gets bought, letting our kid know. These are the rules. And the rules, just like every contract we sign, can get updated, can change, can have like something, is voided, So having those open conversations, dialogue with the people that are helping you raise your child and with your child, so we could find something that fits everybody.
Sure.
I know your question was how can we regulate the phone usage. I would invite the parents, or all parents, to also assess your relationship with your phone usage. If you are, now the iPhone gives you like a weekly summary of how many hours a day are you spending on your phone, right? So just glance at that, don't ignore it every Sunday morning when it pops up on your phone. So assess your own relationship with technology, with what having a phone or access to internet and media within your household and your family dynamics, right? If you're all going out to brunch and everyone is on their phone, right? Is that the only way that you interact with each other while being connected to the phone, right? Or being on social media during that time. So I would invite you to be curious as to like what it means, right? If you're a stressed out parent with a toddler and this is the only time that your toddler will give you a break, right? Then maybe it is a time for you to think about how you can get more support or more help. So that you can be more present and engaged versus disengaged and just giving a tool for your child to stay focused for a few hours. So think about and ask yourself, what is your current relationship with technology, with the phone usage, right? What do you use it for? How are you modeling the usage of it for your children? Because they're learning from you and their peers, of course, because they know everything from their friends. But most importantly, like, are you giving a phone to your child when you're distressed and you can't manage your own emotions, right? And so really thinking about that and exploring that and thinking if there needs to be a change in the family dynamics and the family rules, right? Of like, maybe we all need a phone break at a certain time of the day, right? So just exploring that.
Director Buckley?
And for us, I think it's setting up the ground rules right from the very beginning. If you're going to give your children a phone, that's your phone that you're letting them use. That means you have access to that phone. They can't be hiding stuff with passwords and things like that, and to review that phone on a regular basis to see what they're looking at, see what they're searching on the internet, things like that. But on a positive note with a phone, I'm not plugging any apps here, but there's an app out there called Life 360, and it tracks your kids. You can see where they're at. When they start driving, it tells you how fast they're driving. So, it's got a lot of great resources also, but that's also another way to track your kids, to see what they're up to, where they're hanging out, what they're, I know it's a lot of big brother stuff, but as parents, that's what we have to do. We have to watch over our kids and see what they're getting into and who they're hanging out with and things like that, because that's how we get ahead of a lot of these things.
Good. I'd like to invite questions from our audience today. Any questions or comments? Please.
Our governor just announced within the last 24, 48 hours that he wants to bring about legislation to eliminate phones in schools throughout the state by law. That other states have already done it. Any comments on that?
I'll repeat your question in case it didn't get picked up. In the last couple of days, the governor is talking about introducing legislation to restrict phones by adolescents in school. And your thoughts as a panel?
I'll start. I strongly support that. I don't see a need for kids to have phones in schools while they're in the school environment. And I think there are some schools that limit it right now, and we've seen good success with that. So I think it is a good idea, and hopefully that does go through.
Mm-hmm. Good.
I think I have mixed feelings around that, but I did work in a school where they literally locked up the cell phones. It was a high school. I think it became more problematic for the administration to manage the lock-in, the confiscation, and the entire discipline system around it. But students were allowed to engage with each other and focus in school in a different way. But I'm also thinking about the students that may need to listen to music to kind of regulate during the school day so that they can be able to stay focused and do their work. I'm mostly thinking about neurodivergent students with different needs and disabilities. And so I think it might be like based on a school environment or depending on the needs of the child as well. Something to think about.
I definitely think that an all or none approach should be is a bit extreme, maybe. I think that the kids are struggling already, and to increase their distress would turn them to what they need the most, as someone who can validate them at all times. I think that it's important to invite adolescents and provide them with the psychoeducation around the risk and the harm that can lead to excessive screen time use or cell phone use. But I also think that we know our adolescents are developing and they're learning how to keep secrets, and we don't want to create a system where they are engaging in more secretive, nuanced behavior to get their needs met. We want to collaborate with them. We don't want to other them. And then, like was shared, for our neurodivergent students, they will be othered because they may be the only ones able to access their phones through accommodations. And I think that could be an extreme approach, and that there might be more of a systemic approach that could be more supportive to actually address the issue that we're talking about, which is accessing credible sources of information, turning to real people for back and forth conversations like we talked about today, and trusting our parents and the adults in our lives to keep us safe. And so if we remove those phones, we're basically telling them implicitly that we don't trust them to be a part of their own journey to protect themselves.
Good. Do we have any other questions from those who are attending today? Please.
One of the things that you had talked about was the CID training. Some of the things that we've seen in the communities now are kids are often in schools. They would teach 6, 7, 8 hours a day, whatever it might be, coaches, things like that, various activities. Are there trainings out there, CID training, mental health first aid training, those types of things that can be presented in the school system, presented to athletic organizations or whatever it might be out there that can help others, other than the parents, other people that are involved with our kids for exorbitant amounts of time, to help them see what the signs are and help them learn how to help the kids in those situations.
Again, the question is the availability, or what might be available, or what needs to be developed in terms of training for teachers, parents, that would help address adolescent and children's mental health issues, or just simply, if I had a youngster at this time, I would love to attend a class on how to deal with social media and your children. I'll turn it over to the group.
I think one of the services that the Loft at 8 Corners provides is called the Loft on Wheels. So that's where the clinicians at the Loft at 8 Corners go to you, whether it be a school, a park district, a community place where parents already gather naturally. And we provide catered presentations, and we already have a list of presentations that have been asked from partners in the community to present on. And if you want for us to come and present to, let's say, your church, the YMCA, your school, feel free to come and ask us. I think that's something that I keep running into is the accessibility, not just being there and presenting, but also providing resources. So like today, right? Like where somebody who probably couldn't come today can see it later. Or I know we've been in the talks of creating like shorts of our longer presentations, because let's be honest, not everybody, we're so packed that sometimes we don't have time to sit in an hour, 2-hour presentation, but we have 5 minutes to look at some key points. And maybe if that caught our eye, we can ask the questions. But I think that reaching out to community partners that you already know, and they usually guide each other of like, oh, maybe we don't have this, but I know this organization. So using what we already have as a community, because you don't know if something's already built or maybe it needs to be built if enough people ask for it.
Good. You bring up a very important point in terms of reaching out and the availability of resources. Certainly the Riverside Mental Health Board, we've got a video, we have presentations that are available, as well as our agencies. So all they need to do is just ask. Okay, in closing up our presentation today, I would like to invite if there's any final comments from our panel before we convene.
I just had one thing I saw, and it was on the NAMI website, and it says, let's replace silence with support, stigma with understanding, and fear with hope. And I think that's very important to get that message out there, that we have a lot of people and a lot of resources here to help our residents in our community, and we need to take advantage of that. So please, and I thank you and everybody here for being part of it. It really helps us out a lot, and definitely appreciate it.
Good.
Yeah, thank you.
Any final comments?
Definitely that you're not alone, whether you're a parent or an adolescent, a child. If you're seeking support, there are community resources available, so please utilize them.
I would say something I would like everybody to have a takeaway is that it's okay to ask for support, and that we do have providers. And I always tell anybody that comes through the doors of the Loft at 8 Corners, if I don't know the answer, if nobody in the building knows the answer, we will call the people we know to get you your answer. We're big on advocating for people and using these natural community systems that we already have to provide you support. So if you don't know an answer to this question, it's okay to go and ask. And I know that, so Pillars has a clinic, and then something that they do is then, they assess how you're doing with your mental health. And even if the first step is making a primary care appointment because you're too scared to go into a therapy office and then answer truthfully in those things, and that's how you get the support, that's okay too. Little steps get you there.
There's so much going on out in the world today, but as shared earlier, take care of yourselves as we continue to try to take care of each other.
I think when addressing the dynamic change that we're experiencing as a society, we really need to consider psychological safety. Children, adolescents need to understand that it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to mess up. When we have psychological safety in the household, we know that kids are more likely to rely on their caregivers or someone that they trust to report, any type of danger that's occurring at school or anything that's concerning that's happening inside of them. We know that people who don't have psychological safety are more willing to keep secrets. They turn to sources that aren't credible. They look for validation in places that we'd rather them not. So having a general theme of psychological safety in your household will help cultivate a safe space, not just for your child, but for you to be able to provide timely response and intervene when the moment comes.
Yeah, I think we need to engage our children and, as somebody had mentioned earlier, model good behavior. Lastly, all of the agencies are supported by the Riverside Township Mental Health Board, which means your tax dollars are supporting us, so please take advantage of the services that are offered. It's okay to ask for help, and that's what we're here for.
Good. Again, thank you for watching. Again, I would like to take the opportunity to thank the supervisor for Riverside Township for being here and making this possible. Also, a note of appreciation to the president of the Riverside Township Mental Health Board, who was involved in the planning and putting together of this event over the previous few months. To our invited guests, Dr. Denise Dailey, again, appreciate your time and work on this.
Thank you.
Director Buckley, thank you. And a big shout out to the social service agencies that are providing services to the children of Riverside Township. And thank you all for attending, and stay tuned for our next show, probably coming up in about 6 months. Thank you.